Alright. So the moment I knew things were about to get stupid, like legally stupid, was when I saw my own private property sign floating down the creek like it had just given up on life. Yeah, just drifting there like, man, I tried. And I remember standing there, boots in the mud, coffee still in my hand, thinking, there's no way these people did it again. But deep down, I already knew who it was. See, I just moved out to this quiet little pocket of land outside a neighborhood I'll call Maple Ridge, not inside it, not part of it, just adjacent, like the introvert at a party who didn't actually RSVP. And the best part of the property? It came with creek rights. Not shared, not community-owned, not open to interpretation, legally mine, from the old stone bridge down to a crooked oak tree that looked like it had seen every bad decision in human history. Now, enter the HOA, because of course there's an HOA. And at the center of that circus was a woman I'll call Darlene Whitaker, mid-50s, always moving like she had an invisible campaign camera following her, clipboard glued to her hand, oversized sunglasses like she was hiding from accountability instead of sunlight. You ever meet someone who talks like every sentence is a rule? That was Darlene. And listen, this wasn't our first rodeo. A month before this, she left me a note about my shed windows being too reflective. 2 weeks after that, she had opinions about my mailbox, even though 3 other houses had the exact same one. But mine, apparently, was non-compliant. Funny how that works. So when I walked down toward the creek and saw 3 lawn chairs, a cooler, a Bluetooth speaker playing smooth jazz like it was a budget spa retreat, and Darlene sitting there with 2 of her HOA sidekicks, fishing in my water. Yeah, I didn't even feel surprised anymore, just tired. Like, really? We're doing this now? I cleared my throat. Loud, not aggressive, just enough to let them know the homeowner had entered the chat. Darlene turns around slow, gives me that smile people use right before they say something insulting in a polite tone, and goes, "Oh hey there, we figured since it's just a little creek, it wouldn't hurt to enjoy it as a community." As a community, I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because sometimes your brain needs a second to process that level of entitlement. I told her straight, that's private property. You're trespassing. And one of the others, I'll call her Linda, she snorts like I just said something ridiculous. Don't be dramatic. It's just water. Just water. So I go back up to the porch, grab a laminated copy of my deed. Yeah, I keep one handy, because apparently I live in a sitcom, and I walk back down, hold it up, and say, this says otherwise. That creek? Mine. Legally. And that's when Darlene hits me with the line that still blows my mind. She goes, well, the HOA voted last month to open it up to residents. I just stared at her. Like, you ever hear something so wrong you don't even know where to start? You can't vote to give away something you don't own, I said. That's not how property law works. She waves her hand like she's dismissing a waiter. Don't be difficult. We're not hurting anything. We've been coming here for weeks. Weeks. That we're just stuck. Because now it wasn't just them sitting there. It meant this had been going on behind my back, repeatedly, like they'd just decided my land was part of their weekend plans. So I didn't argue anymore. I just turned around and walked back to the house. And yeah, maybe that looked like I was backing down, but what they didn't know was I had cameras. Not the obvious kind either. I mean full coverage, 4 angles, wired system, private storage, the kind of setup you install when you don't trust people who smile too much at boundary lines. I pulled up the footage, and I swear, I wish all I saw was them fishing. Because what I actually saw, 3 weeks back, Darlene and 2 other board members, chainsaw in hand, cutting down a dogwood tree. My tree. Not trimming, not cleaning up, cutting it down and dragging the trunk like they were building furniture out of my patience. Then 2 days later, they come back with gravel, dumping it along the bank like they're paving their own little VIP entrance. Another clip, rope swing installed. Another, kids splashing in the water while adults sat there drinking, like it was some HOA-sponsored summer camp. I just sat there in my kitchen, staring at the screen, feeling that shift happen. You know the one, where something goes from annoying to serious. Because this wasn't neighbors being annoying anymore. This was trespassing, property damage, unauthorized construction, liability risks, and worst of all, it was deliberate. And right there, in that quiet kitchen, I made 2 calls. One to someone who knew the law better than Darlene ever pretended to, and one to someone who could actually enforce it. And that's when things started to get very real. Now before I jump back into what happened next, let me pause for a second, because this right here, this situation, it's actually way more common than people think, and if you don't understand the rules, you can get steamrolled real fast. So here's the deal. According to standard procedure, an HOA only has authority over properties that are legally within its jurisdiction, meaning your parcel has to be explicitly included in their governing documents, usually tied to your deed. If it's not, they don't get to fine you, regulate you, or vote on your land like it's a shared backyard. That whole, "we voted to open your creek" thing? Yeah, that's not governance. That's make-believe with paperwork. From a legal perspective, what they were doing crossed multiple lines at once. Trespassing is the obvious one, but cutting down a tree, altering land with gravel, installing structures like a swing, those aren't small infractions. That's property damage and unauthorized land modification, and depending on the state, it can escalate into civil liability or even criminal charges real quick, especially when minors are involved. But here's the part people don't talk about enough. This is a psychological trap. HOAs, or at least certain personalities within them, rely on something called assumed authority. They act confident, they use official-sounding language, they hand you notices, and over time you start thinking, well, I guess they have the right to do this. Even when they don't. It's not always about rules, it's about control. And the moment you challenge that illusion, things either snap back into reality or escalate fast. And in my case, it escalated. So yeah, after that little reality check, I didn't waste time. I called my friend. I'll call her Vanessa Cruz. She used to be a county prosecutor, now she handles real estate law, the kind of person who doesn't raise her voice because she doesn't have to, the law does it for her. And when I sent her the footage, she didn't even hesitate, just goes, "Yeah, this is clean. This is very clean." And if you've ever dealt with legal stuff, you know that's basically lawyer speak for they're in trouble. Then I called the sheriff's office. By that afternoon, I had a deputy standing in my backyard, arms crossed, watching the clips on my tablet, chainsaw, gravel, kids, the whole unauthorized summer camp package. He let out this slow breath and goes, "Yeah, they didn't just step over the line, they brought equipment with them." And I asked him straight, "Can you cite them?" He looks at me and goes, "We're past citations. You want to press charges." Now, I'm not a call the cops over everything kind of guy. I like peace, I like quiet. I bought land for a reason. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was weeks of deliberate behavior. So I said yes. No hesitation. That's when the dominoes started falling. Vanessa dug into my deed and easement records that same night, and about an hour later she calls me back, and I can hear it in her voice, that little edge of excitement lawyers get when something lines up perfectly. She goes, "You're not even in their HOA." I blinked. "What? Your parcel sits just outside their jurisdiction boundary. They have zero authority over you. Every notice they've sent, legally meaningless." And I just sat there for a second, smiling like I'd just found out the boss fight I'd been preparing for wasn't even allowed in the game. Because now this wasn't just trespassing. This was fraud. The next morning I filed everything: trespass, vandalism, property damage, and Vanessa started drafting a civil suit on top of it. Injunction, damages, legal fees, the whole thing. Meanwhile, I went back down to the creek, took photos of everything. The stump, the gravel, the swing, even the empty beer cans. Because once you understand the situation, you stop seeing it as mess and start seeing it as evidence. 2 days later, the sheriff served them. And let me tell you, neighborhoods talk. Fast. By the time I was unloading groceries that evening, my neighbor, I'll call him Rick, walks over, gives me that look like he just watched a reality show unfold in real life, and goes, "You really got them served?" "Yep." He just whistles low, about time. And that's when things shifted from me versus HOA to everyone versus HOA. People started coming by, quietly at first, sharing stories. Fines that didn't make sense. Warnings that didn't match city code. Harassment over things that weren't even violations. One woman told me they tried to fine her daily because her driveway curved too close to her mailbox, even though it was built to code. So I started organizing everything. Not just my case, everyone's. I built a folder, labeled it something like HOA overreach, and inside it, patterns, abuse of authority, misrepresentation, and now, criminal trespass. That weekend, the HOA panicked, called an emergency meeting. I didn't go, didn't need to, but Vanessa did. And she didn't show up empty-handed. She walked in with packets, evidence, legal notices, documentation proving they had zero jurisdiction over my property, and a warning: any further action against me would be considered harassment under state law. She told me later. Darlene didn't look angry. She looked scared. And that's when the unraveling started. One board member resigned almost immediately. Another started backtracking, saying she wasn't really involved. The rope swing disappeared overnight like it suddenly realized it was evidence in a criminal case. But it didn't matter, because the sheriff's office followed up with formal charges: trespass, unauthorized land alteration, endangerment of minors. The fines alone stacked up past 15 grand. And here's the kicker: they couldn't use HOA funds to pay it. Personal liability. Out of pocket. That's when the illusion cracked completely. But it still wasn't over. Because a few days later, I noticed something weird. A white SUV parked near my property, engine running, someone inside taking photos. Didn't approach, didn't say anything, just documented and left. I already knew what that was. Desperation. Vanessa confirmed it the next day. The HOA had filed for a property reassessment, trying to trigger a zoning review, hoping to find something, anything, to flip the narrative. Classic move. Shift attention. Create doubt. Stall. But here's where they messed up again, because the county was already involved from the original report. So when that reassessment request came in, it didn't start an investigation into me. It triggered one into them. An inspector showed up the next morning, clipboard in hand, walking my property line, and after about 10 minutes he goes, "You're fine. But their community garden? It's over the boundary. By about 20 feet. 20 feet. And just like that, the spotlight flipped. Within a week, code enforcement showed up. Environmental officials showed up. Turns out the gravel they dumped near my creek had disrupted a protected runoff channel. Something I didn't even know about. I didn't report that. Someone else did. Because once people saw the footage, they started digging. And what they found was a pattern. Unauthorized projects. Misused funds. Quiet little improvements that just happened to benefit board members. And then, the big one. Financial records. Turns out Darlene and another board member had been approving reimbursements to themselves, thousands of dollars, for equipment that never existed. Fake invoices. Connected vendors. Sloppy enough that once someone actually looked, it fell apart fast. And that's when it stopped being a neighborhood issue and became a criminal investigation. The state got involved. Subpoenas went out. Bank records pulled. Emails exposed. And 2 weeks later, Darlene was arrested. No drama, no big scene. Just quiet, early morning, cuffs, and a very different kind of authority showing up at her door. The rest followed quickly. Charges. Co-conspirators. Accounts frozen. Meanwhile, my case? It moved fast. Judge flagged it as public interest because it involved abuse of governing authority. We won everything. Damages, legal fees, full restoration. But the real moment, the one that stuck with me, wasn't the win. It was the meeting after. Residents gathered, fed up, done with the whole system. And someone pushed for a vote, not to fix the HOA, but to dissolve the leadership entirely. And it passed. Unanimous. Just like that, the same structure that tried to take control of my land collapsed under its own weight. But if you think that's where it ended, yeah, not quite. So, after everything settled, the lawsuits, the arrests, the meetings where people suddenly discovered their backbone, the neighborhood got real quiet. And I don't mean awkward quiet. I mean the kind of quiet that actually feels earned. No more warning letters taped to mailboxes. No more random violations showing up out of nowhere. No more clipboard patrols like we were all contestants in some weird suburban game show. Just people living. And I remember walking back down to the creek one evening, same spot where this whole mess started, and for the first time in a long time, nothing felt off. No chairs, no music, no strangers acting like they own the place. Just water moving the way it's supposed to. And it hit me, none of this had to go that far. Because here's the thing. And yeah, this is the part where I sound like I'm talking to you directly. The lesson here is, most of these situations don't start with big violations. They start small. A comment, a note, a friendly reminder. Something easy to ignore, easy to brush off, until one day it's not small anymore. And from a legal perspective, what saved me wasn't luck, it was documentation. Cameras, records, knowing exactly where my property line was, having proof when things crossed it. Because once you step into a dispute like this, it's not about who's louder, it's about who can prove what actually happened. But honestly, the legal side is only half the story. The other half is people. This is a psychological trap, and I've seen it now in real time. When someone acts like they're in charge long enough, people start to believe it, even when it's not true. Especially in HOAs, where the language sounds official, the letters look formal, and the pressure is just constant enough to make you second-guess yourself. You start thinking, maybe I'm the problem. And that's how it spreads. Not through rules, but through silence. Because the second people started talking, really talking, comparing notes, sharing stories, the whole thing unraveled fast. Turns out, I wasn't the only one dealing with it. Not even close. And once that illusion broke, there was no putting it back together. So if you take anything from this, it's this. Don't assume authority is legitimate just because it's loud, organized, or wearing a title. Ask questions. Check documents. Know where you actually stand. And yeah, speak up sooner than you think you need to. Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to be that guy. The one filing complaints, pushing back, dragging things into legal territory. Nobody does. But there's a line, and once someone decides that line doesn't apply to them anymore, ignoring it doesn't keep the peace. It just delays the fallout. And when it finally comes, it's always bigger than it needed to be. So now I'm curious. If you were in that situation, you find people using your property like it's theirs, backed by an HOA that acts like it can rewrite ownership, what would you have done? Would you confront them right there? Let it slide at first? Or go straight to legal action like I did? Drop it in the comments. Because trust me, stories like this, they're way more common than people admit. And sometimes the difference between a quiet neighborhood and a full-blown legal mess is just one person deciding they've had enough.